Hello, happy Friday. How is everybody doing? If I'm getting any signs of life happening on the webinar, please say something in the chat, say where you're calling in from today, just so we can see that we're good to go. Perfect, there we go, we've got some responses coming in. G'day, my name is Jason Schwab. I am a producer on Workspaces, and this is Office Hours by Workspaces. And look, we really want to thank you for joining us today. It's a really special installment of Office Hours because, you know what, it's our very first Office Hours. So thanks for joining us. And look, we know that there is a lot happening at the moment everywhere across the country and also across the world at the moment. And there's probably a lot happening in your world with everything that's happening. So we really appreciate you tuning in today. And look, a lot of stuff coming in through the chat now. Philadelphia, St. Petersburg, great. Glad to have you. And look, for those of you that don't know who we are, what Office Hours is, or who Workspaces is, what we do. Last year, we held our very first inaugural Workspaces retreat in October. Look, Workspaces is for corporate real estate leaders and people in workplace design. And the feedback we got from our first event was really humbling, really positive. It was great to bring everyone together. Everyone walked away really feeling like they had really wonderful hallway conversations and were able to talk one-on-one and get things done. So that's what we're really trying to replicate here with Office Hours. Why we exist, why we do what we do is we really live to create environments where leaders can come together, talk human to human, and share big ideas that really move the industry forward. That's what we're trying to go for here with Office Hours. We want to replicate the intimate nature of what we get at our events, and with that in mind, we really want to make this interactive. And the way we're going to do that is a couple of things. In the chat area, just to the right of it, you can see we've got also to the right of it a poll section. I'm going to run a poll now just so you guys get used to the interface and you can take part and see what that's like. I'm going to run a poll now. You're going to see that pop up on the screen if you can take part in that. And I'll come back to the results on that poll just in a minute. But in the meantime, the other way we're going to keep it interactive is, look, we want to hear from you guys. At the end of the day, I'm just a lowly event producer. I don't live and breathe in the industry just like you guys do. So we want to have your input. And to show how that's going to work, I'm going to bring on my colleague, Michael Owens. Michael Owens is the executive producer of Workspaces, which means he's my boss. But today I'm going to refer to him to our question assistant. So question assistant, are you there?
I am here. Can everybody hear me? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yeah. And look, yeah. So question assistant, what are you going to be doing in today's session?
Well, first, I would have a camera, but we had to spend all the money on those fancy pillows behind you for you there in your bunker that you're hiding out in. But thanks for hosting today on our inaugural installment of Office Hours. So as Jason was saying, for us, what we're looking to do here is, I guess a lot of us have been signing on to webinars and webcasts that are just basically, conference calls with video and a few slides. We want this to be interactive. There's a lot of, great people, as we can see in the attendance here today. So of course in the chat, everyone's chiming in where they're coming from, and they'll obviously be able to come in and chat clear. Hey, Brian Weldy from HCA. Thanks for letting me know I'm coming in clear. But Q&A section is in there. So we really want to hear your questions. If there's a challenge you're working with right now that you'd like to ask any one of our great three panelists that we have today, put that in there. I'm going to be behind the scenes looking through those questions. And towards the end, we're going to, of course, have some time to get to those. In addition, if you've got a question and you'd like to go live on camera, we're going to try to make that happen as well. I know a lot of you maybe haven't groomed in the past 3 months, like my friend here, Jason. He hasn't shaved in 3 months, but that's okay. We're all a community and we can all come on, and it's all about the content. It's nothing to do about how you look on camera. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it back to you, Jason, and you're going to welcome on our first guest, and let's have fun today, guys.
Perfect. Thank you, question assistant, and also thank you for letting me keep this disturbing beard. And like Mike said, we're going to jump straight into it. We have a wonderful lineup. What we wanted to do for the first installment of Office Hours is we wanted to keep it kind of broad. We know there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment. A lot of you are focusing on how you're going to be able to get your workplaces up online again and get people back into the workplace. And what's happening into the future is, I mean, it's a really speculative kind of time at the moment. No one really knows what's going to happen beyond next year. So we thought we'd just look at the future of the workplace from 3 different perspectives. And really excited to have our guests today. And we're going to bring our first one on in just a minute. Kim Lear is the founder of Inlay Insights. She is a generational research consultant, and she's no stranger to workspaces. We actually had Kim come along and be our keynote address on the opening night of Workspaces last year, and she was a huge hit. Kim's really funny. She has a way of shining a mirror back at ourselves from her work in generational research. So before I bring her on, I just want to play a clip of her in action at Workspaces so you can see exactly how wonderful she is. So if we can cue that up, that'd be great.
During the Gen X birth years, the US divorce rate doubled. So you've got a generation of kids who come home to empty homes. Either both parents are working or parents are divorced. So Gen Xers let themselves off the school bus, let themselves in the house, turned on their own television, did their own homework, put their own food in the microwave, organized their own time. One of the trends that we see with Gen Xers in the workplace is this streak of fierce independence, where even today when I ask Gen Xers how they want to work, they're like, tell me what you want, where you want it, when you want it, how you want it. I'm going to go away, and hopefully you're about to go away, and then we can get it done. And when millennials first entered the workplace, more collaborative, which we'll talk a little bit about, but we were like chasing down our Gen X managers. Like I thought we were going to work in a treehouse and write on a whiteboard, and Gen Xers were like, get away from me. So there was this like tension initially. Now again, you know, millennials are much more experienced, and a lot of that has been alleviated. But a decade ago, there was this tension between a fiercely independent generation and one that was more collaborative.
Hopefully you were able to hear that. I know the audio was a bit low on there, but throw a hand up in the chat if you're a Gen Xer, and throw a double hand up in the chat if you'd like to collaborate at my treehouse next Tuesday on a project I'm working on. But more importantly, throw your physical hands up in the air for Kim Lear. Let's welcome her on to Office Hours right now. Perfect. Kim, hello. Welcome to Office Hours. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I love that you guys chose to show a clip of when I was like 7 months pregnant. That's always super fun.
Well, you know, actually, Kim, we've had you speak at 2 of our events so far, and other verticals as well, and you've been pregnant both times. So
yeah, true.
Maybe that's on you. I don't know. You know?
You're right. Yeah. So great to be here. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Perfect. Look, and thanks for being on board today. And look, I know you like to kick off your talks with gauging what the lay of the land is like in terms of the audience. And we threw up a poll before, and I'm just going to bring up the results now, just what generation everyone belongs to. And in terms of what we've got in the room, we've got 15% baby boomers, 53% Gen X, 28% millennials, 2% Gen Z, and there's always one. Stop trying to label me. I do what I want. There's always 1%.
That was my
so that's what. Oh, that was you. Okay, great. You're the one. So look, that's what we're looking at in terms of who's in the room at the moment. And I guess I want to kick it off. I know you've been doing a lot of work lately with the world kind of the way it is and things. 2020 has been a crazy year. So what have you been working on lately?
So I started about 10 weeks ago, and excuse me, I have allergies. But 10 weeks ago, I started an interview series with the high school seniors, college students, and millennial parents. And it's just pandemic specific. So hearing from them their stories about what's going on in their lives, how they're handling school closures, working from home, homeschooling their children, and just this general time of uncertainty. So 100 one-on-one interviews have been conducted, and I also ran a quantitative study in partnership with True Public on those same issues.
Okay, right. And I guess the way that, I mean, this generation in particular, they're obviously having a lot to do with studying virtually and that kind of thing at the moment. I guess with all of us being in the virtual realm and having to work remotely, study remotely, that kind of thing. Do you have any insights in terms of what our attitudes are like towards being virtual and being remote, especially if this is going to become a thing longer term?
Yeah. It's been a little bit different based on kind of who I'm talking to in their life stage. I'll say definitely with the millennial parents. And I saw that someone in the chat had mentioned that like their 6-year-old is watching this webinar with them. And so with a lot of the millennial parents, it's a very unusual time to be conducting these interviews and drawing real conclusions about how they feel about remote work. Because across the board, a lot of what I'm hearing is if my spouse and my kids were not here, then it could be great. But there's no childcare, and most of the schools and the daycares are not open, and so it's just creating this really difficult scenario for parents who have young children. Some of the things that I've heard about that just surprised me, there were like a decent amount of parents who I interviewed where their kids are in immersion schools. And so they're in French immersion, Spanish immersion, Chinese immersion. So on top of trying to homeschool their kids, they're trying to teach them in a language that they don't speak. And so just to kind of give a glimpse of like what these parents are dealing with right now, how difficult it really is to try to balance all of this. So a lot of the parents I talk to, they are missing work. They're missing like going into a physical office. And even just that difference in being able to leave your house, leave some of your parent self, some of your parent responsibilities at the door and go into a different place physically that just sparks something different for you. That is something that's being missed by parents who have young kids.
And on a side note, I'm really glad that we're providing some wonderful content and educational opportunities for 6-year-olds right now. And look, you bring up what we're missing in terms of being in a physical workplace, and it's one of the big things that we're really missing, and I know I'm missing, is that connectivity, not necessarily with people, but other things like being connected to company culture and mentorship opportunities and purpose. I guess, viewing this through the lens of physical workplaces and workspaces, how important are those places going to be in terms of making us feel like at work again once hopefully this is all over?
You cut out for 1 second. Can you ask that last part of the question again?
I guess, yeah, how important a physical workplace is going to be moving forward in terms of having those needs met for us?
I think that one of the biggest lessons that we're going to have is about how the virtual internships are running this summer. And so I'm working with a few organizations who are rolling out those on a really large scale, companies who are still bringing on a ton of interns. And really the purpose, a lot of those intern programs is, one, obviously to vet talent, but also to give them a glimpse into corporate culture, to help them find mentors, to help them build that connection to the organization. And so I think after this summer is when we're really going to see, is that possible? Does that work for a new generation coming in? Can they understand what they need to know about an organization, feel connected to it in a genuine way based on an entirely virtual experience? So that'll be something that I think at the end of August we'll be able to have a better understanding of. But I think that the physical workplace, it's still going to have a place of importance just based on what I'm hearing of how much people do miss that camaraderie, how much Zoom fatigue is out there. And I'm sure that a lot of you on this who are tuned in are probably aware of this, but even just in the 10 weeks that I've been conducting these interviews, how much the rules around on camera, off camera has changed. Where 10 weeks ago, every company was like, camera's gotta be on and we're gonna look at each other and all of that. And now a lot of people I'm talking to are saying if they're not presenting, they can have their camera off. Their leaders are encouraging them to put in their headphones and go for a walk while they're listening into calls, just to give people a break from their screens. So, you can already tell some of the very real limitations of a complete virtual workforce.
It'll be interesting to see as those policies develop, I guess, moving forward too. But I guess I want to shift just to the physical workplace, and we've brought that up, and just how our attitudes are changing towards that. Before all the craziness went down, there was a movement for several years of making workplaces really cozy, comfy, driven by people in my generation. And case in point, I'm speaking from the cinema room of my co-working space, which is, I hate how stereotypical it is that, got to be the most millennial thing that anybody's ever heard of. And I'm in my natural habitat right now. But I mean, once all this is kind of moving forward and we're moving out of the pandemic period, what am I going to care about, Kim? Like, am I still going to want ping pong tables and bean bags, or am I going to care more about not getting coronavirus?
The aesthetic of the workplace, I think, is going to change quite a bit, because a lot of those communal spaces were built for millennials also when they were in a specific life stage, where millennials were later to get married, later to have children. And so they could stay and play ping pong and spend more social time at the workplace. And now a lot of millennials have moved into a different life stage where there's just more responsibilities. And so already in some organizations that I've worked with, those collaborative spaces were already kind of collecting dust, just based on, people having to get home, having a different set of responsibilities. And then the Chronicle of Higher Education had written a really interesting piece about what Gen Zers were looking for in the college experience. And the quote that was just funny in there was saying something about how those rock walls and all the fancy amenities, they were built for millennial students and their baby boomer parents. And Gen Z is much more interested in the ROI of that degree and the services that are provided for students to help them excel and to help them find jobs. And I think that was going to enter the workforce even without the pandemic. I think that just more pragmatic style to everything about the workplace was going to happen, and that would impact aesthetic as well.
Okay. Now I just want to change the focus, I guess, away from millennials and Gen Z. And we spoke the other day, and you raised an interesting point about what's happening with baby boomer workers. What are you kind of seeing at the moment with companies, and what's happening with that generation? Well,
as more and more companies right now, just for economic purposes, are sometimes trying to, people are being let go, there are furloughs happening, stuff like that. There are more organizations who are offering early retirement packages, and more boomers are taking them, possibly because the nature of the coronavirus impacts that age segment more dramatically. And so I think there's some of just that feeling of general vulnerability among older Americans today. And I think that it's going to be an interesting thing, because there's already been a lot written about that, the immediate aftermath of retirement, where in the working world, you have that community, you have that shared purpose. Oftentimes for baby boomers, it's a larger part of their identity. And so there's already some challenges of a bit of an identity crisis, some isolation, some loneliness. On top of that, a lot of baby boomers right now can't be spending time with their children and grandchildren. So I think there's already this booming conversation in American culture about mental health. And I think that there will be more of that, and it will be specifically related to baby boomers who have taken retirement earlier than they were expecting during a time when they can't spend a lot of time with their families.
Right. And I guess what would be the flow-on effects of that then, if we do see this kind of influx of boomers leaving and retiring a bit earlier than we'd anticipated? Are we going to then see Gen X come into the C-suite sooner than we thought? And what's going to happen then?
Well,
I guess you don't know, but,
sooner than we thought, no, because Gen Xers have been at the age where they really could have been in the C-suite, but baby boomers worked longer than anticipated, partly just because it's a young at heart generation, partly because of the ways that they were impacted during the 2008 housing crisis. And so I think we'll see, in some ways, the career trajectories kind of getting back on track, where Gen Xers who probably had the ability to be in the C-suite 5 years ago will now see more of that going on, and more millennials moving into management, and then obviously a bigger recruitment effort for Gen Z.
Right. Really interesting stuff. And just conscious of the time, and I just want to ask you, just given the current climate at the moment, Kim, and what's happening, I know in your city, in Minneapolis, obviously, and all across the country, and it's quite timely. Before this was 2020 descended upon us, the talk about employee activism had really grown quite loud. And how do you foresee that's going to sort of progress moving forward? And what are younger generations or all generations going to be expecting from their companies?
I think it's really going to accelerate that trend of employee and consumer activism. I mean, even if we step away from our current moment right now and just look at what has been happening over the past 5 years, and since Salesforce is on here as well, I'll just use Mark Benioff as an interesting example, where back in, and sorry, I'm reading the quote here, but in a Harvard Business Review article back in 2018, so that was before the Business Roundtable decision was made, that was before this really became what everyone was talking about. He said, CEO activism is not a leadership choice, but a modern and evolving expectation. CEOs have to realize that millennials are coming into the organization and expecting the CEO to publicly represent the values of the organization. And so that's already been part of the conversation. Dick's Sporting Goods and Walmart, they had made changes to their sales of guns after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. And so there is just a lot that was already happening. I mean, over this week, many Facebook employees have quit in protest based on some of Mark Zuckerberg's activity. 2 nights ago, 7,000 people tweeted at the CEO of Spotify to start donating money to help causes related to Black Lives Matter. And I think that some of the people who are protesting and leaving their companies right now as an act of employee activism is even more interesting today than what was happening last year, because the economy is bad. And so leaving your job in protest during a good economy is sort of activism, but you knew you could very easily get another job. Where now, when we're seeing employees make this type of sacrifice, that's a real statement. They do not know if they can find another job right now. And so there is quite a bit of that difference just based on where we're at from an economic standpoint. The history books are going to explain this to us better than we will ever understand it right now. Because the real question I think that is being asked is, who do societies look to provide moral stewardship? And is it religious leaders? Is it political institutions? Is it corporations? And I think that there will end up being a lot of consequences, good and bad, about looking for this corporate morality to guide us.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, look, Kim, thank you so much for your insights. I'm going to get you to stick around for now. I'm just conscious of the time. We've got 2 other guests to come on. So I'm going to stick around. We're going to have you come back on for some Q&A at the end. And as always, thank you. It's really great to get your insights, especially
thank
what's
you.
going on at the moment. Thanks so much. You. Now, look, our next guest is going to be Calvin Crowder. Calvin Crowder is the VP of Global Real Estate and Workplace at Godaddy. And he spoke at Workspaces last year, and we'd like to bring him on right now. Perfect. Calvin, welcome to Office Hours. How are you today?
Thanks, Jason. Wonderful.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Look, I see you have... Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I really love that first poll that came up as we responded on our thoughts of return to office. And I think I responded with that third option. I think I'm going to lose it if I hear the phrase new normal one more time. But look, it's been a tremendous blessing.
Thanks for bringing it up. I didn't actually say those results, but you're right. Yeah. 30% say, if I hear the phrase new normal again, I'm going to lose it. And 33% say that, we're not going to make a return to normal as sooner than we're predicting, and 14% say yes, we will. So, it's a strange time, and which is indicative of the fact that you didn't have a beard at Workspaces last year. You have one now. I don't want to make it weird and competitive, but as far as the beard stakes go, mine is far more disgusting. But I do want to. And I don't know why I still have it. But look, I do want to kick straight into it. I want to see where Godaddy's at, what you guys did when all of this kind of unfolded at the start of the year, and what your plans are moving forward.
Yeah, anytime there's a fundamental shift in how we do things, either a fundamental shift in technology or in our workplace experience, I see a lot of folks and even leaders begin to latch on to the rhetoric, to the hype, to some of this going on during this novelty period, and it sort of reminds me of a time when I was younger. And one of the best and most terrible jobs I've ever had was that of a referee for rec league soccer. I was in my mid-teens at the time. I wanted to make a little bit of extra money on the weekends. And so spending my weekends on the soccer field, it didn't seem like a terrible thing. But if you know anything about rec league sports, the biggest reward is the opportunity to teach and share experiences with a younger generation. And there's so much goodness in that. And it's not always outweighed by these overly involved or active parents. And if you've spent much time around the younger ones, these 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, they're still learning the rules on how to engage. They all seem to converge on the ball like a big blob. And it's hilarious to witness. And then you begin to see one or two of these kids start to figure out that separating from the pack can be advantageous. And so as I was thinking about all of these articles I've read and the return to office and I think the assumptions that folks are making, it reminds me of that pack of 5 to 8-year-olds who are gathered around this ball, all sort of huddling around the same rhetoric.
Right. Yeah. There's always this, and especially when these kind of moments happen, you want to get ahead and kind of do something different, but then it's kind of, I guess we all kind of end up doing something the same. But I guess, so in terms of what Godaddy is doing, are you reopening this year, or is that something you're looking to next year with your workplaces?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Jason. And maybe I'll just take you through our approach, as we've worked through this pandemic, and take decisions on reopening the workplace. In early March, like most folks, Godaddy made the decision to move our global workforce of about 10,000 folks, spread across 40-some sites, to work from home. And that was just prior to all the government mandated orders that were instituted. But in doing so, it was absolutely essential that we, our senior leadership group at Godaddy, aligned on a few key principles that would carry us forward and sort of serve as that North Star as we responded to seemingly thousands of questions, implications, personal situations, concerns that were to come and that did come. And some of those situations that our folks were in were incredibly difficult. A few situations were heartbreaking. And I've gained a lot of appreciation, admiration, and respect for our people operations leaders and teams during this process. And so really the principles have led the way and paved this clear path through all of this, all of these clouds of uncertainty and doubt. And so, Jason, when we think about our approach, we started with this principle of human first. Godaddy's always stood for the everyday entrepreneur. It's who we are. It's the core of our company ethos. And as we faced this unprecedented impact of COVID-19, we knew that we had to be there to support our business community and help them survive and thrive in different ways. So in late March, Godaddy launched an initiative, Open We Stand, to stay open when physical doors are closed and to help our customers weather the storm with tools and resources. So we called up Donald Sutherland with his very calming and soothing voice to narrate this this initiative. But personally, I'm a bigger fan of Kiefer Sutherland, but Donald's great too. So with all the content and the stories, this quickly became a movement, and really that's what we were hoping to do. Again, provide all of these tools and resources in one place for our customers to be able to access. And the other piece of this that I really love is that publicly we made a pledge that we would use our purchasing power to support small business, and we encouraged our employees to do the same. We've had a really great tradition within our workplace teams of working closely with these small businesses to provide catering services, meal services, plant maintenance, fruit delivery, snacks for our local teams, and so on and so on. So it is important that we continue to support these small and these micro businesses, these entrepreneurs who have supported us over the years in their, with their incredible service. And so we work with our providers to divert fruit and food that we would have received in our offices, and we sent those to the food banks. And again, we continue to pay them. And eventually, as we ramp back up and begin our return to office efforts, I look forward to continue to build those deep local relationships with the entrepreneur and the small businesses within the communities where we're at. And the second principle. No, go ahead, Jason.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The second principle.
No, I was just going to say it's really interesting. Yes. So we're having a bit of a lag here. It's really interesting to see the having a North Star and sort of guiding your company in terms of being able to be where the path is going to be instead of being on the ball like you were mentioning before. But you mentioned the second principle as well.
Yeah, the second principle, like unto the first, was all about creating financial certainty for our employees. And so, again, at the start of this, we absolutely committed to our folks for the next 90 days, no layoffs. We would not be letting anyone go. We retained all of our contractors, our facility support, security, janitorial, food services, and we kept everyone, and we continued to pay them. And I think internally, again, as you think about the culture, as you think about certainty in your own personal life, that's meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Great, Kevin, and it's great to see again, like companies, once you sort of have that North Star, I guess you can do the initiatives, do the things that's going to look after your employee base, your customer base, and I guess set you apart. And I do want to shift gears here, and you mentioned all the articles that are floating around online. Earlier this year, you wrote a great LinkedIn piece that I loved, and it was talking about how we can sort of think about workplaces moving into the future. And you really talked about how workplaces are going to have to evolve from being a choice, being a location that employees go to on a daily basis, and becoming more of a choice destination. And I wonder if you could paint a picture for that of that for us. What does it look like if workplaces become places where we don't necessarily have to go every day, which could happen?
Yeah, and I don't know that again, I have enough data to be overly prescriptive on the topic. I think the data that I have right now, or that even we have as a company, we're really looking at the next 30 to 60 days to understand what the road ahead is and to take decisions, based on those principles. So if I think about the mid to longer term future of the workplace for GoDaddy, one, it'll be aligned with those those core set of principles, and two, I think that will establish some new principles. Again, as we think about returning to the office, what our workplace looks like, and perhaps even where our workplaces exist, our physical office locations. And so again, there's a lot of articles out there on work from home, remote, distributed, hybrid working models. But again, I think the principle will really help guide us to the right outcomes.
Sure. Right. Okay. And I think on a call earlier that I had with you before this webcast, I think last week, you had 10% of employees before this working remotely. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then
we had a fraction of our workforce working remotely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess, like every other organization, everyone's working from home at the moment, and you're going to obviously phase that back in terms of returning to the office. But we had the announcement from Facebook and other companies a couple of weeks ago, how big remote work policies are going to become across organizations. And how prominent they could be in the future in terms of, work from home being a real solution for most of the workforce. If that happens, and we are working from home predominantly, what's your role in terms of keeping physical workplaces relevant into the future?
Yeah, and again, Jason, I think for every company out there, there'll be a different approach. There's no one size fits all model that's going to, that'll suit everyone. I know, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook has had a lot of comments out there. Labor arbitrage becomes an important topic. Mark made some really great points on the topic in an article that was recently published this week, as he spoke about adjusting compensation in different markets. Look at, Satya at Microsoft, he I think he has a different view. And, Godaddy also has a different view. If we think about our workforce, about 70% of our employees work on our customer care, our sales and support division. And so the importance of those in-office or in-workplace interactions is actually, it's critical to their ability to be productive and to leverage coaching. Now, I'm not saying that every role in that organization will return to the office, but I do see a significant amount of the folks at GoDaddy returning to office. But again, we'll align back to the principles and take those decisions when it's time.
Of course, and just got a comment here from Greg Newens, working flexibly as opposed to work from home. Thank you. I will start referring to it with that if that helps. And in terms of these arrangements that we are going to have, where we are working flexibly and potentially more remote sort of situations, employee onboarding is kind of an issue too, right? I mean, it's going to be different and easier to do from role to role, but how do you see if, depending on what companies decide to go with and what's right for them, how are we going to build company culture and camaraderie when we're kind of split out and split apart and not in the same place?
Yeah, so if I think about our culture, again, there was a question here about our physical office space. Again, we have more than 40 physical locations across the globe, as I might have mentioned earlier. But if I think about our culture and our communications and really our corporate functions, we've been very office or site centric in our approach in the past. Meaning that if you reside at one of our sites, you're probably getting pretty good support, pretty good IT support. You're getting communications that are really geared towards you. And for our remote employees, and it's been interesting as I've been following our remote employee Slack channel for the past year. I think folks have felt like second-class citizens, and now it's time where they're sort of raising their hands and saying, "Hey guys, this is what it was like for us." And now you've had a little taste of what we've experienced. So I think for my teams, for many of our corporate teams, we have to rethink that. We have to rethink our approach to our working model as we move forward.
And just lastly, Calvin, before I bring Karen on, and we're going to talk more about those flexible working arrangements with her as well. And last year you spoke with Rex Miller in your session at Workspaces about how you transform facilities managers into experience managers to better care for the health and well-being of your employees. With everything that's happening and being in a pandemic and moving through that now, do you see there's an opportunity to evolve that role to, I don't know, sort of help with people's concerns about safety returning to the office? Is that something that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely we are. And I do see those roles evolving, and they are evolving. We have a lot of our experienced managers that are undergoing, health and safety training as we think about return to office. But again, I also understand that there'll be some percentage of folks that don't return to the office, or that work in sort of this hybrid, this hybrid work from home, work from office, maybe 30-70, 80-20, and some sort of split. And so we have to think about how we engage, really well with these folks. And so I see some roles sort of transitioning into almost like concierge roles, where folks who are truly remote, 100% of the time, they need support. It's become very clear and evident right now. I had an IT issue the other day, and I thought, oh man, before I would walk down the hall and talk with my IT folks, and they would have it fixed within minutes. And now, what do? We have processes in place, but I had to go through and learn what those processes were, and it was just, it created a little bit of heartburn, a lot of heartburn, working through it.
I think we've all had a lot of heartburn lately, and you made a good point there, and I think it's a good way to flow on to bring Karen on now, just in terms of where do people go, especially with flexible work arrangements, when things arise, and how do they find the support. So, Calvin, thanks so much for hopping on. I'm going to push this along because of the time, but as usual, really love to feature your insights. And stick around, we're going to have some Q&A at the end, which we'll bring you back on for. Thanks, Calvin.
Appreciate it.
Great. So look, I'm going to bring Karen on just in a minute. Karen is the Consumer and Markets Insights VP at Salesforce, but she's also a part of the Work from Home task force that Salesforce set up when all this started going down. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Karen Manji on right now to have a chat about that. Wonderful. And hooray, we've got Karen up on the screen. Karen, welcome to Office Hours.
Thanks, Jason. I've always thought it would be so awesome to have the Major League Baseball experience, when the player's picture comes up and they're going up to the plate to hit and it plays their walk-up song. I feel like I just got to have a Major League experience. I got like a little walk-up song. It was a lot of fun. In fact, I'm curious what everybody else's walk-up song would be. I mean, imagine how awesome every one of your Zoom meetings would be if right before your picture came in to be at your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised the point. I wish we'd asked you guys what your walk-up music should be. Who said you miss out on things being virtual, right? But look, Karen, thanks for jumping on and walking up to the plate, so to speak. Can you just give us a bit of a rundown of how the Work from Home task force at Salesforce came to be?
What was great is we already had a group of people. We call it our Ohana at home. So Ohana is a Hawaiian word that means family, and it's very baked into our culture. And so we already had some ways that we were gathering together about 10,000 people on a regular basis who were part of working from home already before all of this started. And the great thing about that community of people all over the world is that over time, they've been offering each other tips, right? And hosting webinars about, how to manage your career at a distance and, being connected. So there was a foundation of coming together already. And I'll never forget the time when I saw this mysterious calendar invite. I don't know if this happens to any of you. You recognize the name of the person inviting you and not the topic. And so I get on this call, and it is our senior leader who leads real estate for Salesforce, Elizabeth Pinkham. Some of you may know her. She's fantastic. And Jody Koner from our employee success team. And there were a couple colleagues. Yes, she's fantastic. And, there were a couple of other people who looked as confused as I did, which made me feel better. And they said, hey, here's the thing. We need to build a plan to send everybody home to work from home. And you're all kind of experts in this space. You've been sharing and hosting people, and we want to stay on this call and build a plan with you. And that was the beginning of it. And at first I thought, really, we'd have a scenario where people aren't going to our physical offices? I mean, they're fantastic. And what that has become over time in terms of that task force is a myriad of ways to bring people together and engage them in serving each other. So, Calvin was mentioning that dream of the help desk. We've taken that same kind of concept, but built it out, not just for technology, but for other just work from home topics. Right.
And I guess you mentioned a couple of things there in terms of support. I know you've had a few other initiatives going to help support workers when their rug's been taken out from underneath them and they're not in the office anymore. And what other kind of resources have you put in place and initiatives to help them in this period?
Well, something that we've been thinking about is, with everything that's happening in the world, people need connection with each other more than ever. And it's ironic that that's coming against a landscape of a scenario where we're all feeling kind of isolated in our homes in various quarantines, and maybe isolated from our coworkers and from that collaboration because we're doing this from our home offices. So something Salesforce started, and it's available to everyone. You are all invited to watch the series. It's called Camp Be Well Together. And we invite a series of experts on a range of topics. I mean, we have people who are expert in meditation. We had Venus Williams come on and do a whole stretching routine together with us that we could do from our home offices. We've had Jane Goodall talk about environmental impacts. We've had leading physicians. We've had world record holding surfers, all kinds of tools to address different ways to come together, but also ways to stay well and to stay centered and to take time to focus on our well-being throughout the day. And, we encourage people, bring whoever you're sheltering in place with, or whoever else is working from home, wherever you are, and make that a part of your day. And we record them and make them available as well. So that's a big piece, of the investment that we've been doing.
Right. And that's really interesting because working from home has its challenges. And I'm just going to throw up a poll now because it's kind of a universal feeling, and just to get how people have been struggling with working from home, working flexibly in their circumstances. And that poll will come up on the screen momentarily, and I'm just going to follow it up with a backup poll there as well. And I'll come back to those results in a second. But I guess what I want to ask as well, I mean, you've done these amazing things. You've had these guests come on and sort of provide these services. And what I want to ask is, that requires quite a bit of spend. And I wonder how much it has been in terms of the spend for you guys. And those kind of high profile things obviously aren't as available to a lot of other companies out there. So how would you sort of suggest that companies go about implementing this kind of thing? Because from what it sounds like, it's been a really important part of your strategy through this period.
Well, we've also had lots of, what I would call grassroots leadership, of employees revealing what I would call hidden skills and talents that are really useful and helpful in this time. So a couple of examples that come to mind. One of our employees is focusing on building a breathwork coaching practice with pranayama and helping people, breathe and learn about meditation. So she uses just collaborative web technology and invites people once a week to join a session where she teaches you and guides you. And then she asks for some feedback so that she can keep improving her skills, but she makes that available for free. It's just a calendar invite. We've got another employee who loves to cook, who started thinking about how sheltering in place has become stuff your face, and is doing some really resourceful things around doing little online cooking sessions and inviting people to share a family recipe and get on together and prepare it, and share the story of your heritage or a favorite memory or why it matters to you or what it tells us about you. And then we're collecting those. And these are all just because employees are saying, I have something that can make this more fun, or I can help people with a coping skill. We have other people doing exercise classes. All of those things are free in scale, and help your employees, use skills and interests that they have in new ways that are really useful and beneficial during this time.
That sounds like a really great way to engage your workforce and get them involved in the process. Just look at that poll that we had come in before about what is your biggest work. We've got 17% say isolation is their biggest challenge, and 50% say burnout is their biggest challenge. So I guess having these kind of resources is really handy. And the other follow-up poll that I had was whether or not people are watching from their pajamas. We've got 16% coming in working in their pajamas as well. So, and that's what I find difficult about it, is that difficult separation from waking up, getting the kitchen bench working, and then just kind of mishmash delving into my personal life, and there's no defined boundaries. So I guess from your experience with this and comparing that to what maybe other companies are doing, how important is it to have this kind of strategy in place to support your workers when they're working?
Yeah, so when
Especially
this all started,
we're going to be doing this a lot more moving forward. Do you think companies should be doing more?
Well, so what I think happened at the beginning was, people were in a bit of a state of chaos. I mean, a lot of things about how we live our lives and freedoms that we enjoyed, even if that was going into a physical office to work, changed really, really quickly. And, what got unintentionally established was a new set of routines, rituals, and boundaries. And I think now that we're a little bit further into so many people working flexibly and may continue to do so, I think it's about taking a pause to assess what are the routines, rituals, and boundaries that help you show up at your best and also not use all of your energy at work. And I'll give you an example. I think most people have a getting up and going to a physical office work routine, whether that's making your coffee at home, stopping a favorite coffee shop, maybe you listen to a podcast. And then at the end of the day, something that signals that you're leaving work, right? Again, it might be phoning your mom back while you're doing your commute drive home. It might be going to your child's athletics practice, but there's a series of signals there that happen and say to your brain, I'm leaving work now, I can change the channel. And I think when in that home office environment or the working from flexibly and from anywhere environment, you have to be purposeful about how do you send your brain the signal, I'm going through my routine of getting ready to work. And so it's time to change the channel. And when I'm done, how do I exit? And I kind of think of work now as like the pantry in your house. Every time you go to your kitchen now, it's easy to open the pantry and find a little snack, even if you're not really hungry. And I think, when work is always around and we're not dedicating it to a place and having routines, rituals, and boundaries, it's very easy to walk by and snack on work, like we do with those chips that are in the pantry.
Right. Yeah, I could resonate with that. And just lastly, before we bring on everyone back on for Q&A there, Karen, when we talked the other day, you mentioned the thing that you're probably most concerned about when people start going into physical workplaces, and your concern was how do we make those places human? And I guess, our audience here of corporate real estate leaders and workplace designers, what should they kind of be focusing on, and what is Salesforce focusing on to make these places human?
So we're thinking about it from 2 points of view. So first, we did roll out a suite of products called work.com. And the tools are designed to help people return to work safely. So to keep track of employee wellness and proximity and all of the ways that we need to be using and gathering data to make data-informed decisions. So not just a feeling of something that's happening or context, but really being able to put data together. And then you'll also see, if you check it out, some coming soon resources that help with workforce reskilling, emergency and crisis management, et cetera. And then because we realize, as people go back to offices, we're all kind of shift workers now. If you get to go back to the office, it's probably for a shift of time on a specific day of the week, probably not 5 days a week with your full team for the same number of hours before. The other side is we're continuing to offer some work from anywhere support and resources. In fact, I am writing a book about working from home that's coming out in the August timeframe, and have been doing some blogging about it with a colleague, because what we realize is more people will have this as their normal. And it's fantastic to have products that help people use data to go back to work safely. And at the same time, we need to acknowledge that people will still have careers they want to manage from a distance. People will still need to feel that sense of connection, still want to extend their professional network, whatever that might be. So it's important to offer resources on both sides of that. And I would say, by the way, to all of our real estate planners,
and it's amazing you guys have put all these resources.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. Yep.
Well, what I was going to say, since we have so many people here who are focused on the design aspect and how do we help people have the interaction, somebody shared an analogy and it resonated with me. They said, well, now that, Netflix and Hulu and all these other services are coming out, people will never go to a movie theater again, right? Movie theaters will all go away. And that didn't ultimately happen. There's a little pause, although drive-ins are coming back, right? Because of everything going on. But the reality is there are circumstances and places and times where we all want the shared experience of the scary moment or the big laugh in a movie. And there's other times we want to consume that same content and have a great experience in our own homes. And I noticed several people posting about, Zoom calls and events. And I think it's about how do we design now office spaces in a way that people can have kind of the Netflix or the in-movie theater experience, right? That if you're consuming that content from a place other than the physical office, it's engaging. People aren't isolated, they're brought in, it's inclusive. And how do we just keep that core connection element, even as we bring people back together physically and have them a little more spaced out?
Perfect. Look, thanks, Karen. Thank you so much for your insights. It's really wonderful to see you have so many resources coming out, and I'm sure everyone's going to be looking forward to the book that you have coming out in August. You've certainly been keeping busy. Look, I'm just really conscious of the time, and I want to see if we can have Kim and Calvin, if you want to come back and join Karen, and see if we can get one or two questions in. And I think we might have, let's see if we get our question assistant back in. Mike, do we have anyone that's able to go live?
Yes.
Or do you have any questions that come up in the Q&A tab?
So, we had Matt Burbet from NBC Universal, and we had him teed up to go live, and he disappeared. Maybe because I know we're getting closer to the hour, he made a hop onto something else. Okay. And with that being said, I know, we are running a little bit over here. And of course, if some of you have to go, can all the panelists stay for a few extra minutes? And for those of you who do have to go, we will be sending out a recording, so we will get to some of these questions. But I guess the one that, and Kim, you mentioned it too. So David Stella asked, do you feel, the expansive use of Zoom type meetings is making these types of activities, breath classes, yoga, etc., more feasible and more obtainable, since we now have much more experience using this type of video tech? And then Kim, of course, you commented on that. I guess, Kim, what are your thoughts? Oh, Kim, your microphone's off. You just got to turn your mic back on. No problem.
Sorry. No, I even put in there, I'm curious what other people think about that, just because in these 100 interviews so far, when I talk to students about their online learning, there's just so much dissatisfaction. They miss their in-classroom experience so much. And so, we'll see how that moves into the workforce. And, but I think, and I know a lot of people have talked about this opportunity for virtual for all, and then a premium for in-person. And I could see a model like that happening, where these in-person events and this in-person experiences will be fewer and far between, will maybe be more expensive. And maybe those experiences will be even more thought through, really meaningful, but there will be virtual options for everyone.
Good. One other question that we have in there is, do any of your, I guess, directed to Salesforce and GoDaddy, do your work from home programs include provisions for any furniture or tech hardware? I guess we answer a little bit there, but I guess if you guys can elaborate on that.
Yes, Salesforce does provide. Oh, sorry, Ken.
No,
Salesforce does do an equipment grant for employees, and also a one-time noise canceling headphone expense. So yes, we do offer that.
And Calvin?
Yeah, very, very similar at GoDaddy. It was a bit, I don't want to say comical, that's the wrong word to use, but when we did transition to work from home, again, 90% of our folks were in the office day to day. And so, we created a very simple, service desk ticket where folks would fill it out, and they just took everything home with them. Take your monitors, take your keyboards, take your mice, take your peripherals, take your chair home with you. And we just want you to be comfortable working from home. And then, further to that, we are offering an allowance to our employees to procure any additional equipment, materials, sort of a one-time stipend to, take care of the things that you need to take care of to accommodate your work from home, the work from home program right now.
And the one other question we have in here that's in the Q&A section is from Lisa Schwartz at Proco. When we return back to normal, what percentage of employees that have been working at an office every day prior to COVID-19 will just end up continuing to work remotely? Now, that, of course, is not a question we kind of ask, but, I guess get a specific percentage and number. But do you guys believe, with Salesforce, and GoDaddy, that you're going to see a larger percentage of this being permanent?
we believe that we'll see a larger percent being permanent. So we are asking our employees each month when we're doing little wellness check surveys, and we'll ask questions of, if you could return to the office safely, would you want to be there at the same amount you were before, or less, and why? So, we're keeping a pulse on that. We have made an announcement that people can continue to work from home through the end of the year, certainly in all roles. But yeah, we think we'll see more people doing it permanently.
And I guess a follow-up question to you, Karen, then, do you see that the days of Salesforce towers, maybe you think of you see those in the future? I know that's maybe not something you want to answer,
yeah,
but I mean, just
well,
the large...
No. We've made a big commitment on our real estate for a variety of reasons, and Elizabeth and her team are spending a lot of time just reimagining, what cleaning looks like to keep people safe, and how do you still keep the best of community and gathering opportunities so people can feel that camaraderie that Ken was talking about at the beginning of the call, but do so safely. And also thinking about, conference room space and just redesigning the flow. So I think it's just a next opportunity to innovate, what the workforce and workplace of the future is going to look like.
Got it. Well, those are all the questions that we had in there. Jason, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Any other questions, Mike? Okay. Perfect.
No,
well,
I mean,
look,
I guess the only thing that I had... the only other thing I had here was on the virtual interns thing that Kim Lear had mentioned earlier. I know that there's a lot doing that, and I guess if there's anything from Calvin or Karen about how do you have large programs for those this summer, and how are you managing that? I guess that's to Calvin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we do have a very robust internship program at Godaddy. It's been interesting. I've gotten a lot of feedback from some of the interns directly on the program, and it's been very positive. We've made some accommodations for folks to be able to really accommodate their internships. We had some folks that had planned to be in a particular location, and then for whatever reason had to be overseas with family during this. And so I think it all comes back to the guiding principles: human first, ensuring that we're taking care of our people, and I think again that becomes our North Star as we return to our office and as we think through sort of this longer term, whether it be our real estate strategy, whether it be our people strategy, the labor markets that we continue to target for top talent. We'll rely on those principles.
Great. That's it from the questions there. Jason, I'll let you wrap it up.
Really conscious of the time there. Okay, perfect. We're 5 minutes past, and look, I just want to extend a huge thank you to all three of you, Kim, Calvin, and Karen. Really wonderful to have your insights featured on the first episode of Office Hours. So thank you so much for coming on board, all three of you. And also a huge thank you for anyone who tuned in today. We want to keep running Office Hours on a bi-weekly-ish basis. So please reach out to us, and if you for collaboration opportunities, if you have an idea, or if you have any topics that you want us to hit up on the show, please do make sure you reach out. And otherwise, I guess we will see you in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, folks.